The following recording is a sample from my audiobook, The Zen Life, Spiritual Training for Modern Times, and it's available on Audible as well as iTunes. Inside each of us is a critical voice of dissatisfaction. If you've ever wanted to start something new, change a habit, learn a skill, be more successful, move through life easily and express yourself authentically, you're probably aware of how challenging that can be sometimes. Because let's face it, for whatever reason it's easier to be distracted by social media, eat foods that are less than healthy, skip exercise more than we should, drop helpful practices like meditation, miss time with the important things and people we care about, and spend that time feeling bad about the past and worrying about the future. We do this instead of really taking care of ourselves and being powerful in our personal and professional lives. Why is that? Well, in my 14 years of training at a Zen monastery, I studied this a great deal. What I noticed was that under my immediate awareness was a constant stream of thoughts going. We called them voices. You may have noticed them too. Voices that say things like, "You're too busy to do that course you would love to do," or "There's not enough money for you to afford that," or "You'll get to it later, tomorrow," or "You'll do it next time," and then never do it. Have you heard voices like these? If so, jot some of them down in a notebook or a journal. Get them out into the open. Please note, there's nothing wrong with you for hearing voices. It's normal. Everyone has voices running in their heads, and if you know someone who says that they don't, they may just not be aware of them. Here's the deal. These voices are what you need to address before you will ever be deeply free or happy. That's a pretty bold statement, I know, but listen. These voices create anything from mild dissatisfaction to worry, to fear, to overwhelm, to distraction, to stress, to confusion, to feeling bad, to depression, to anxiety, to... you get the picture. And there's a great deal of momentum they've generated over a lifetime, which is why it's so hard to go up against them. Some people attempt to overcome them in a variety of different ways, like through drugs, or they may decide to change careers and do something less taxing, or ditch certain toxic friends, or try a course on mindfulness, perhaps even take up yoga or meditation. I know people who have weekly massages and spa treatments just to get away. Perhaps you've tried some of these things too. But if you're like anyone else I've ever known, you may have noticed that even though it helped short term, it didn't really stick. The book inspired, but then that inspiration faded. Or you had an amazingly peaceful experience at a retreat only to find that all your problems and stressful issues were waiting for you when you got home. It's like the entire experience got erased, like it never happened, and you're back to square one. This can be so frustrating. I know, I've had this happen to me many times. And then when push came to shove, like in a highly charged moment at work, driving on the road, or with a loved one, all my knowledge and good intentions disappeared and I totally lost it. I flew off the handle. Then what did the voices say? "Look at you. You know better. You claim to be so together, yet you're no better than they are." And then I got to feel bad. I'm not saying that the methods I mentioned earlier are ineffective. I meditate and do yoga. What I will say, however, is that they're not going to address the real underlying issue. And the real issue is? The real issue is that the change needs to happen from the inside, not by changing the outside circumstances, which is what most people try to do as an attempt to escape or numb out. Do you know these two quotes by Albert Einstein? We cannot solve our problems with the same thinking we used when we created them. Insanity, doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. These quotes point to what I did before my Zen training. I spent years listening to and believing an inner self-sabotage system of limited thinking, distraction, and feeling like I wasn't enough. As far as I can tell, everyone everywhere has it, and we pass it along through the generations like some negative gene. So what's the answer? What do we do? Here's my best answer. Learn a practice that will begin to turn the system in the other direction. It's what transformed my life and the lives of those who came to practice at the monastery. This practice and my stories about it are what I'll be sharing in the following chapters. The practice. Learning to love learning. When I first showed up to train at the monastery, I was asked to do whatever task was set before me. I was shown how to do the task. I demonstrated that I learned it. I was corrected if I didn't get it right. I demonstrated it again. If I got it right, then I did it on my own. This process continued from cleaning outhouses, to chopping carrots, to greeting new guests, to running the kitchen, to operating the small business, to facilitating retreats and workshops. I don't know how to was the perfect place to be. What I eventually learned was that the process of learning itself can be joyful. And that's exactly what I learned at the monastery first and foremost. A desire to cultivate an attitude of mind that embraced curiosity, wonder, and Zen's beginner's mind, what we called the spirit of inquiry. Patience. Patience is the supreme spiritual discipline, the Buddha. I don't think the Buddha was talking about the kind of patience in which you don't blow up in anger at a coworker. I suspect that he was referring to the endurance necessary to practice ending suffering despite all obstacles and resistance, to never swerve from that single-pointed focus. Many people bring some form of spiritual practice or discipline into their lives. They may create a morning ritual, daily prayer, or meditation practice. At the Zen monastery, we talked about a more powerful way to consider practice. Instead of bringing a practice into our lives, we brought our lives into spiritual practice. In this way, everything that happens to us is lived within the context of practice and nothing is left out. This made it very clear that the first priority was practice. Practice was the container of our lives and our focus was on how everything else fit into it. It became obvious when daily distractions arose to pull us away from our focus by something that seemed more important. Because our lives were a spiritual practice, we were not tempted to lose hope and patience. Someone who makes this type of commitment becomes very clear that there is no more waffling left. What that person is saying is, I am no longer deciding to practice whenever it feels good or right or when I need it or if I'm in the mood to practice. Practice is my entire life and who I am. Ripping the skin off the snake. There are two ways: the violent, painful, cruel, and pointless way, or the natural, timely, and gentle way. The snake's skin will be shed the moment it needs to be, and no sooner, at the right time. Only we get impatient and rip ourselves apart in our race to success, happiness, and fulfillment. How can we slow down and move with life and its cues, to follow the path and see the main view when we arrive at the main view? Trusting that the main view does not show up earlier, but rather when we arrive. Everything in its due time. Love will save you. One day you finally knew what you had to do and began, though the voices around you kept shouting their bad advice. Introduction to Mary Oliver's poem, The Journey. When I began my training at the Zen monastery, I made a written commitment to practice for a certain length of time. I committed to a year and then I recommitted yearly for 13 years. At that time, I shared my intentions and what I would need during my stay. Phone calls to my family every Sunday, access to toiletries, dental cleaning appointments, and anything else I could foresee wanting or needing. I was going to face the monster inside of me. The other monks and my teacher were going to support me on my mission to see how I caused myself to suffer so I could ultimately drop that and end suffering. I was asking them to take ego's escape route away from me by locking me in with it. Out in the world, I could quit if it got too hard. I knew I could become distracted, or something more important could come along and I'd go after that instead. I needed their compassion and support. I needed to see that the monster was in fact a mouse, with a very long and sinister shadow that scared me. Fast forward to the beginning of my coaching career outside the monastery. I noticed that the equivalent to this type of commitment out here in the world was created through the use of money. I saw that the moment my clients invested in themselves, the magic began. The waffling, wavering, weeble-wobbling, half-hearted dabbling disappeared for a moment, and the part of themselves who had already succeeded inside of them showed up. These clients metaphorically shut the door on themselves and proclaimed, "Come hell or high water, I'm going to make this happen. I will succeed." And you can hear it in their enthusiasm. The degree of this enthusiasm appeared to be in direct proportion to the size of their investment. The greater the investment, the more on the line and the more value they placed on their dreams and transformation, the more formidable the door. Sometimes this enthusiasm lasted over the course of weeks. However, in my experience, it could vanish before the first payment has been made. A bump into the voices of fear, scarcity, doubt, and something wrong could suddenly wake the monster inside, and they'd go running into the night for mommy. Even friends and relatives thought they'd gone crazy for doing this and tried to talk them out of it. This is why locking the door is so very important. Because what happens when it is locked is my clients must face everything and avoid nothing. The voices do not want to change. They definitely don't want this type of scrutiny. The voices are very happy with the safe, small, secure, and suffering little life they've enslaved my clients into, and I've watched them become identified with these voices. They go pounding at the door, begging to be let out. "I made a mistake, I made a mistake. Please let's just call this off and give me back my money." Compassion does not let them settle for less. You are adequate to your own experience. In fact, you are more than adequate. You are a hero in this game called life. If you keep playing, you will face down the monster. With no escape, insights will drop in, and you will shift your focus from a really great big hairy problem to a gentle fundamental question, what's possible? Now you are open to solutions. With compassion, you will be supported to face your relationship with yourself and create your dreams. The negative has been transformed into the positive by just a single shift of focus. The energy of fear will become used by the life force animating you to create a passionate vision instead. My experience as a coach is that I serve as the door and the compassionate stand I take for my clients. I see who you are and what you are capable of, and I will help you realize this for yourself. I will not let you give up on yourself, because I love you. The power of love is the most powerful one there is. I guide my clients into that loving relationship with themselves. I show them that there's life outside the cell, that commitment and willingness is the key, and love is the pathway through. The toe-dipping dabbler versus the deep-diving master. I once asked a coach if she had her own coach, and she replied, "I'm in these coaching groups, and so I get plenty of support from the coaches in there." I repeated my question, being more specific. Do you have a coach that you work with one-on-one? You know, a paid coaching relationship in which that coach works with you on a regular basis. She quickly, and almost in an ashamed tone of voice, replied, "No, I don't. I know everyone says I should, but I haven't." All shoulds aside, I shared some of my experiences of having my own coach with her to see if I could help her understand the difference between having a serious paid coaching relationship versus having a friend, mentor, or peer coaching exchange. Here are some of the things I said to her, plus some musings I added to support my recent insights. The various spiritual practices, weight loss programs, and coaches out in the world are relatively the same. Relatively. It doesn't matter what or who you pick. What matters most is that you commit and find your want to. If Zen speaks to you and you see your life begin to shift when you practice, then really stick with it and go deep. Meditate and seek a teacher. If a certain diet is the one you would like to try, then stick with it. Find a support group with people doing this diet and keep going. If a coach you worked with resonates with you and you know a difference has been made already because you have seen results in the session you've had, make it a point to hire her or him to go as far as you can. Lock the door, get the keys away from the voices, and throw them away. Stop dabbling. Go the distance. You see, so many people have a consumer mentality when it comes to practice or commitment. Let me see what you've got, and if you can't give me what I want, then there's another personal development program a click away that promises instant success. We hop from thing to thing to thing, making potholes in our backyards in search of water, not seeing that what would really work would be to pick a spot, any spot, and go deep. Resistance uses fear to stop us from doing anything that could truly help us. This is why change, even if it's change we say we want, can be so challenging. Meditate, eat healthily, exercise, do a gratitude journal, spend more time in nature, practice kindness and generosity, learn something new you'd love to learn, hire a coach to help you fulfill your dreams. Yikes. But get distracted, eat a bag of chips, sit on the couch, gripe about problems, surf the web, daydream about what you want to buy, get lost in habits and putter around endlessly? Very easy. Why? Because we're being scared to death by anything that could successfully turn us loose from the conditioned voices in our heads. On autopilot, these voices are in control. If we were to get present and start calling the shots in our lives, then the jig would be up. We would be free to live the audacious lives we were put on this planet to live, and they would be out of business. I like to reassure people by telling them that resistance is normal. Yes, if you commit to selling all your belongings and move to a Zen monastery, what I did, your belly will become filled with nest-kicked hornets and freak out. Yes, if you invest more money into your coach than you have to your name, what I did, you will not be able to sleep at night because the voices will pound you for being a crazy fool. But if success, happiness, fulfillment, moving toward freedom, living the life you were meant to live, choosing you over the voices and attaining mastery are what you want, then you know that resistance will be part of the journey, and they're only part of it. Feeling the discomfort, hearing the voices shrieking, taking the leap and doing it anyway always puts the power back into your camp. You are training yourself to choose freedom as a function of who you are. Every time you do that, you are trusting your actions more and your life will start to expand with possibility. And this is when things start to really get interesting. Commitments and sabotage. Hi, Alex. A quick question about commitments and sabotage. I managed to work out 10 minutes every day for almost 3 months. If I didn't do it for a day or two, I would get right back into it. Now I haven't really worked out in a month. It's that glass ceiling thing again. I keep hearing, you are so busy, you're doing all these other things, you don't like exercise, and I convince myself that it doesn't matter so I don't have to beat myself up. Now that's a total pattern, right? Like with your online retreat. When I think about just do it now, sneak a day from the voices say it's pointless if you don't do it regularly, and you won't do it regularly if you don't really commit. If you commit, it will be stressful and you will punish yourself for not doing it. Any thoughts? Yes. Make a commitment to something, like working out, and pay attention to see what happens. It doesn't matter what you commit to, whether it be meditating for 5 minutes upon waking, tidying up the house for 20 minutes per day, or sending a weekly email to someone that brightens their day. Whatever it is, make an agreement with yourself to do it. Next, pay attention to how you do or do not do what you agreed to do. What do the voices say? Are they enthusiastic and excited, or are they resistant and complaining? Do they compare your success to others? Or do they distract you from remembering your commitment entirely so that you forget? Or something else. Pay attention to all of it. Be a super sleuth. If you get derailed, simply recommit. Don't buy into the voices' assessments of you. Drop them and jump into the game again. See how they throw you back into the pot. Get out. Back into the pot. Get out. See everything you can about the process. Awareness is key. Pay attention, believe nothing, don't take anything personally. Commit only to see and learn everything you can about how you do or not do everything. About the author. Alex Mill is a Zen Life coach. He trained in a Zen monastery for nearly 14 years. During that time, he assumed various leadership roles in nearly every facet of the monastery's operation, from being the cook to the gardener to the work director to the manager of the small business off the monastery's property to the Sangha coordinator who made sure the practice stayed accessible to members far and wide. He facilitated workshops and retreats, as well as offered guidance appointments to Sangha members in person and abroad. Alex also created a cartoon series called The Voices that helped illustrate in a humorous way how all human beings are caused to suffer and how to end their suffering. Today, he coaches business professionals, out-of-the-box creative thinkers, and entrepreneurs on how to overcome their biggest obstacles and create success from the inside out. Through private one-on-one coaching, a powerful online retreat, public talks, and workshops, Alex shares what he learned in his Zen training to transform lives and businesses. He continues to practice kindness and compassion for himself and others by loving life, practicing yoga, cooking whole food plant-based meals, learning, writing, painting, and illustrating cartoons for his forthcoming book, The Voices and What to Do About Them. You can learn more about Alex and his work by visiting his website at www.alexandermilljr.com.